How's it going, everyone? It's David Lee Goodman and Jackson Maddox. We're
going?
here again to go through another neighborhood in Nashville. And today we're going into probably one of the most popular, prolific, the beginning of Nashville being cool. We're getting into East Nashville.
Yep.
And I'm kind of nervous to get into East Nashville because there's a lot to say about East Nashville. Can you just describe East Nashville for me?
Sure. So anybody in Nashville that you talk to, if you mention East Nashville, they're going to say something to the effect of, oh, that's where the cool people live. That's where the hipsters are. That's where the young people want to live. Some variation of that. I would say that's definitely been true in the past. I think you're starting to see a larger millennial demographic, older millennials that are starting to have kids. And of course, that's because property values have gone up significantly. Still definitely a cool spot in town that a lot of people want to be. Lots of good local restaurants, breweries, vinyl.
And for
vintage.
me, when I first moved to the area back in 2013, East Nashville was just becoming the spot. Mm-hmm. And when I say that East Nashville is like the beginning of Nashville, kind of like the next generation of what people know as Nashville, I think that all kind of started in that area.
Yeah.
When you think about, like, if you're talking to a local, if you're looking at Nashville on a map, like I am right now, East Nashville encompasses this area. So here's Nashville, and then here is basically what I used to think of as East Nashville. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it was probably closer to this area, right? Yeah. Since 2010, whatever it was, since then, that area really has started to expand, because if you look at geographically East Nashville on a map, right, you can see that the Cumberland River goes all the way over here. And so you've got a major body of water that separates this pocket right here of East Nashville and this part of Nashville, which is Donaldson. This isn't East Nashville. This is Donaldson. We did something on this neighborhood. They're totally different, and you can't get to one side with a bridge. There's no bridge here. So East Nashville truly is kind of a locked-in pocket of the city that it's kind of hard to get in. In my opinion, I
do it every day, and it's a nightmare.
So and it really is like, but that's where all the cool stuff is. I mean, restaurants, coffee shops, breweries, hipster kombucha shops. I mean, vintage clothing. A lot of great mom and pop.
Absolutely.
Everything is in this area. It's walkable. There's a lot in there. And I'll just say, we're going to get into the neighborhoods, but because of kind of how it is and how popular it is, East Nashville now has become more like this. This is more like East Nashville now. So it's kind of gone from down here and moving up north progressively. Right. And really it's staying within this pocket for the most part. And I've got a few different maps we can get into. Can we just get into some of the neighborhoods and kind of when those began? And we're going to do a brief history on these, but I think it's important to talk about them briefly because there's so many different styles of housing in East Nashville. And I think to understand why there's so many styles, you have to kind of know where it began and why other houses have been built, what kinds of things happen, tornadoes, fires, just all sorts of different things over the span of late 1800s until now that has hit East Nashville to kind of cause what East Nashville is today. So let's get into some of the popular neighborhoods that are within East Nashville.
We see East Nashville in the mid 1800s to kind of the upper mid 1800s. It's a lot of farmland. And if you think about how small the downtown of Nashville was at the time, that was a little ways out from the downtown center at the time. And then around the late 1870s, you start to see people coming in and putting houses on these farmlands, just starting to really develop the area out a little bit more. And so At that point, you have historic Edgefield.
This little pocket right here.
Yep.
So that's where it began. And when were houses being built in that area?
So that was primarily like 1870s,
Right.
kind of, and then
kind of houses back then. That's with the
yeah. So that's Italianate, Renaissance Revival, and Queen Anne primarily. So to the untrained eye, you might look at those houses and they all kind of look sort of the same. There's subtle differences between them, but they all originate from the same basic era. And so a lot of it looks historical. When you see those types of houses, that's what you think. You think history. From there, things kind of progressed into East End, which was around 1876. And the Edgefield community prior to that had become... It went from farmland, it became sort of a trendy neighborhood, actually, of the time. And so East End was basically meeting that demand where Edgefield had filled up, and so they needed to expand more.
Kind of get East Ends now, we're getting into like Victorian style housing.
Yes.
And that's similar to what we're seeing over in Edgefield.
You know, you start to see a little bit more uniformity as these things get built, but definitely staying within that sort of Victorian era styles of houses. And then from there, Lockeland Springs came along, and that was in 1880. So all of this is happening very fast. It's all kind of dominoing, and which is very interesting, really, as a side note. Looking at East Nashville in the past 10 to 15 years, it's interesting that the growth that we've seen is sort of mirroring the original growth of the area, where it was in a short span of time, maybe 10 or 15 years, it went from farmland to subdivisions popping up. So it's kind of, the area's sort of always had this
cool factor.
Yeah, cool factor.
Well, they're historic houses.
Yeah.
Like you can get into some. It's a historic kind of neighborhood. So you can go from Victorian to brand new builds and everything in between.
And we would definitely be remiss if we didn't mention that this is probably one of the most popular areas that we're seeing HPRs or tall skinnies pop up. There's a lot of that. So some of the smaller old houses are now becoming that.
Yeah, just to kind of give you some idea of some of the things that have hit East Nashville to help create the diverse architectural houses that you see in the area. We've got the Great Fire of 1916, which took out a bunch of houses. The tornado of 1933, which took out a bunch of houses. Tornado, and then going into the 1990s, we just had, we experienced a tornado right before COVID in 2020. So there's been a lot to hit this small pocket of the city for whatever reason. And obviously when things get torn down, I mean, we had a huge flood in 2010, which kind of snuck over from,
the river overflow.
Right, exactly. So it's been hit from every side. And so within that time period, just naturally, you're going to get some existing houses and then a lot of newer houses just in that time frame, just rebuilding. That's really interesting, and I think there's one other area. I think we talked about the historic. When I first moved here, I didn't really think of Inglewood as East Nashville, but I mean, depending on who you're talking to, it's always been East Nashville. But for sure, if you look at a map now, Inglewood is kind of that northern part of the city, and it encompasses a lot of space. And in that area, I kind of think of that area as more like the 1950s and 60s ranches.
Definitely.
Just throughout there, just a lot of suburban building. So I guess that happened more in the 60s and 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I mean, as time goes on, you're seeing in Nashville this over time into the 1900s, you're seeing all this northern development where it's just moving further and further north. So Inglewood is interesting because everything in Inglewood says Inglewood, but anybody that lives in Inglewood tells you they live in East Nashville.
Yeah, they're in East Nashville.
So it kind of depends on who you ask, like you were saying. Some people are going to say, no, that's not East Nashville. That's not true East Nashville. Other people, I think colloquially today, it's East Nashville as far as anybody's concerned until you start getting a little bit further north.
Yeah.
And it starts feeling more disconnected from, it's a vibe thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of the vibe, let's talk about just East Nashville, the vibe in general. What are some of the things that people love in your mind, love about East Nashville?
Food and bars / breweries, I think, are going to be the number 1 and 2 things that people are really gravitating towards. There's Mitchell Delicatessen, which is a really great sandwich place.
Right.
You've got Hawkers, which is really good Asian street food. It's a
I
fusion.
just went there with my wife.
Yeah.
That place is amazing.
So good.
So just like steak, great ramen.
One place that's very nearby me, walking distance to me, is Babo Korean. And it is a great Korean bar that I love. Did some filming there. I'm going to make a TikTok, do a little short with it.
Right. Nice.
I felt very weird pulling the camera out for my meal, but
They're totally used to it.
Yeah, it's really good. And then there's a Texas barbecue spot that I went to.
Oh, interesting.
And that was cool. I just had to go because of the Texas thing, and that was really good.
Texan, was it okay? It was good?
It was good. It was really good. They had good barbecue sauce. I had the pulled pork. My friend got the brisket sandwich and liked it, and that's Shotgun Willie's.
Right on.
Kind of north.
Shout out Shotgun Willie's.
Shout out Shotgun Willie's. I guess another place that's kind of a 5-in-1 is Hunter Station. It's a food court. If we want to touch on a few just like bars and stuff.
Well, let me hit some. So I got, just to name some so we can name drop some. So you got 5 Points Pizza. You said Mitchell's. Like, one thing I'm going to say, we're focusing it on the small businesses. Like, they try to put a Target in East Nashville, and the area just like blew up. Like, that's the kind of place that we're talking about. It's going to be local owned businesses only. There's a high, if you're into that, East Nashville is your city.
When I'm at home and I think I'm going to go out and grab some food. Yeah. I don't think a chain like doesn't even pop into my head because there's so many other options where like maybe in a different part of town, running and grabbing McDonald's is going to be way easier than thinking of, what's the good mom and pop shop around here to go get a burger. Right. But like, there's just so much of it that you don't even think about, the other.
Great place to visit. Just a good place to kind of hang out.
If we want to touch on some venues, there's 3 really good there's way more than this, but 3 good ones that I figured I'd touch on. The 5 Spot, which is in 5 Points, really good atmosphere. They're doing shows every night of the week. The East Room, which is just a little bit north of that. It's kind of tucked back there, but there's always good shows going on there. And then a little bit bigger venue, the Basement East.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good overview of like East Nashville, if you've never heard it. If you're into locally owned restaurants, if you're into walkability, if you're into historic houses, if you're into just an electric kind of diverse, city center kind of community, you're going to love East Nashville. There's so much culture and there's so much diversity in the area that there's something pretty much for everyone. So if you're kind of new to Nashville and you're coming to the area, it's definitely a place you're going to want to check out. And I'll say, if you are thinking about moving to Nashville, let us know. We can definitely hook you up. We'll grab some coffee, and if you like East Nashville, we can show you some spots in East Nashville to hang out.
Definitely.
If you have any other questions or want to leave any comments, please feel free. We really appreciate you guys watching the video, and if you need anything from us, please feel free to reach out. Our details are in the description below. Thanks again for watching. We'll talk soon.